The Bob Crane mystery finally solved and isn't good. Bob Crane, 1928-1978, was an American actor, drummer, and radio personality best known for his iconic role as Colonel Hogan in the hit sitcom Hogan's Heroes, 1965-1971. Born in Waterbury, Connecticut, Crane started as a popular radio host before transitioning into television. His charisma and comedic timing made him a household name during the 1960s. Despite his success, his personal life was marred by controversy, leading to a shocking and unsolved murder in 1978. Crane's legacy remains a mix of celebrated talent and tragic mystery. The Golden Rise of Bob Crane. Bob Crane's early career in Hollywood shone brightly, marking him as one of the most recognizable television stars of the 1960s. Before becoming a household name, he built a strong foundation in radio, where he was celebrated as Los Angeles' top disc jockey and earned the nickname the Man of 1,000 Voices. His quick wit, improvisational humor, and musical talent made him a favorite on-air personality, paving the way for his transition to television. Crane's true breakthrough came with the sitcom Hogan's Heroes, 1965-1971, where he played the clever and charismatic Colonel Robert Hogan. The show was a massive hit, blending humor with World War II settings, and Crane's performance turned him into an icon of American television. His face was everywhere, on billboards, magazine covers, and even lunchboxes. Fans adored his charm, and critics recognized his talent, earning him an Emmy nomination. During this period, Crane seemed unstoppable, embodying the golden image of the clean-cut, all-American star who could make audiences laugh with ease. His charisma, confidence, and broad appeal not only brought him fame, but also cemented his place in pop culture history. Bob Crane's hidden dark descent behind the bright spotlight of fame. Bob Crane's life began to spiral into darker, hidden corners that few could imagine. While the world still saw him as the witty and charming Colonel Hogan, his personal life was unraveling. His marriage grew strained, and his craving for excitement led him down a dangerous path of obsession. What began as a search for thrill gradually transformed into a compulsive addiction that would ultimately overshadow his career and reputation. Crane developed an unsettling fascination with recording his intimate encounters. Using the emerging technology of the era, he began videotaping his relationships with women, many of whom were unaware they were being filmed. This obsession was not a solitary endeavor. Around the early 1970s, Crane met John Henry Carpenter, a video equipment salesman who introduced him to advanced recording devices. Their shared interest quickly blossomed into a controversial partnership. Together, Crane and Carpenter cultivated a disturbing routine. They traveled across the country, arranging encounters with women, and meticulously recorded their experiences. The two were inseparable, bonded by this secret lifestyle that blurred the line between friendship and complicity. For Crane, this hidden double life became more intoxicating than his acting career, feeding a destructive obsession. As years passed, Crane's reputation in Hollywood began to shift. His boy-next-door image clashed with rumors of his private behavior, and the once beloved star found fewer opportunities on screen. Yet, instead of pulling back, he dove deeper into the underground world he and Carpenter shared. What might have started as curiosity turned into an all-consuming fixation. The cameras, the tapes, and the secrecy became his escape, but also the chains that dragged him further from the success and admiration he once enjoyed. Crane's downfall was no longer just about fading fame. It was about a personal abyss of obsession, secrecy, and dependency on a friend who encouraged rather than stopped his descent. The murder that shocked Hollywood. If Bob Crane's secret life had already begun to unravel his career. The shocking events of June 29, 1978 would forever seal his fate as one of Hollywood's most tragic cautionary tales. On that morning, the beloved actor was discovered brutally murdered inside his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment. The scene stunned investigators. Crane had been bludgeoned repeatedly with a heavy object, and an electrical cord was wrapped tightly around his neck. Yet, curiously, there were no signs of forced entry or robbery. Whoever had committed the act was someone Crane had let inside willingly. The crime scene was unsettling for another reason. It reflected the double life Crane had been living. Scattered around the apartment were video cameras, photographic equipment, and countless videotapes capturing his secret world of sexual exploits. These tapes, once a hidden obsession, suddenly became key evidence in the investigation, suggesting that Crane's private life and his murder might be intimately connected. Suspicion quickly turned toward John Henry Carpenter, Crane's longtime friend and frequent companion in his hidden activities. Carpenter had dinner with Crane the night before his death, and the two reportedly spent the evening watching some of their videotapes together. According to witnesses, tensions had been growing between the men as Crane began distancing himself from the lifestyle Carpenter encouraged. The possibility of a falling out, combined with Carpenter being the last known person to see Crane alive, made him the prime suspect. Still, investigators faced an uphill battle. Despite the damning circumstances, no murder weapon was ever found, and forensic science in 1978 lacked the precision needed to secure a conviction. Though police noted blood traces in Carpenter's rental car, the technology of the time could not definitively link them to Crane. Without physical evidence, the case stalled, leaving Carpenter free and the crime officially unsolved. The murder of Bob Crane became one of Hollywood's darkest scandals. An actor once celebrated for his charm and humor reduced to tabloid headlines about his secret tapes and violent death. The tragedy not only marked the end of Crane's life, but also exposed the destructive collision between fame, obsession, and betrayal. For decades, speculation swirled about what truly happened that night, but one fact remained clear. Hollywood had lost one of its brightest, yet most tormented stars in a mystery that endures to this day. Crime solved through forensic tech. In the immediate aftermath of Bob Crane's brutal murder, Scottsdale police faced an uphill battle. The crime scene was both shocking and frustratingly clean of conclusive evidence. No murder weapon was recovered, no clear fingerprints were lifted, and there was no sign of forced entry. Investigators were left with a high-profile victim, a suspicious friend in John Henry Carpenter, and a media circus hungry for answers. Yet, despite circumstantial suspicions, the case lacked the hard evidence necessary to move forward in court. For years, it sat in limbo, haunting both investigators and the public who wanted justice for the fallen television star. Through the 1980s, the Crane case became a symbol of an unsolved Hollywood tragedy, one where everyone seemed to know the likely suspect, but no one could prove it. Carpenter maintained his innocence, insisting he and Crane were close friends until the very end. Meanwhile, questions lingered about the blood traces and mysterious smears found inside a rental car Carpenter had been driving. At the time, forensic technology was simply not advanced enough to make a definitive match. By the 1990s, however, science had begun to catch up. DNA testing was revolutionizing criminal investigations across the United States, turning what once were inconclusive samples into potential smoking guns. Investigators revisited the Crane case, hoping that technology could do what witnesses and circumstantial theories had failed to achieve decades earlier. Forensic experts ran new DNA tests on the tiny blood spots and tissue samples found in Carpenter's rental car. The results electrified the case. Although degraded by time, the samples produced a partial DNA profile that matched Bob Crane. It wasn't a complete match, but it was enough to reignite the investigation. Prosecutors believed they finally had the evidence needed to bring Carpenter to trial. In 1994, more than 15 years after Crane's death, John Carpenter was formally charged with his murder. The case instantly returned to the headlines. After years of whispers and speculation, the trial promised to deliver long-awaited closure. Prosecutors argued that the DNA evidence placed Crane's blood in Carpenter's car, linking him directly to the crime. The defense countered that the partial match was inconclusive and that contamination or innocent transfer could not be ruled out. Still, for many watching, the fact that forensic science had reopened the case after so long felt like justice inching closer to the truth. Though the trial would ultimately raise as many questions as it answered, the reliance on DNA testing underscored how advances in forensic science had transformed the pursuit of justice. For Bob Crane's case, technology became the key to breaking decades of silence, proving that even the most stubborn mysteries could be challenged by science and persistence. The trial and the failure of justice. When John Henry Carpenter finally stood trial in 1994 for the murder of Bob Crane, many believed that decades of suspicion would at last be confirmed in a court of law. For the prosecution, the partial DNA evidence discovered in Carpenter's rental car seemed to be the long-awaited breakthrough. They argued it linked him directly to Crane's murder, filling the gap left by years of circumstantial speculation. Yet, as the proceedings unfolded, the hope for closure quickly gave way to disappointment. The central problem lay in the evidence itself. The DNA, degraded by time and poor preservation, offered only a partial match to Crane. Defense attorneys seized upon this, arguing that the degraded samples could have been contaminated or transferred through innocent means, without a murder weapon, without fingerprints, and without eyewitnesses. The case against Carpenter was built largely on inference rather than undeniable proof. Jurors were left with troubling questions. Was the blood in the car really conclusive? Could someone else have committed the crime? Did the police mishandle the investigation from the start? Compounding the issue was the way the crime scene had been managed back in 1978. Scottsdale police, inexperienced with high-profile murders, allowed contamination and failed to secure key pieces of evidence. The apartment where Crane's body was found had not been sealed off adequately, and multiple people walked through before forensics could properly document the scene. To the jury, this mishandling weakened the credibility of the entire investigation. In 1995, the verdict was delivered. John Carpenter was acquitted. For the court, reasonable doubt outweighed the circumstantial evidence. For Crane's family, friends, and millions of fans, it felt like a crushing failure of justice. While Carpenter walked free, the lingering cloud of suspicion never lifted. Many continued to believe he was guilty, but legally, the case was closed. The trial highlighted the frustrating gap between public perception and the standards of proof required in a court of law. Justice for Bob Crane seemed forever out of reach, not because people didn't believe they knew the truth, but because the system could not prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. In the end, Carpenter's acquittal underscored the painful reality that some crimes, no matter how notorious, remain unsolved. Robert Crane Jr.'s truth quest. After the trial ended in acquittal and the justice system failed to provide closure, the responsibility of protecting Bob Crane's legacy fell heavily on his family, among them, Robert Crane Jr. Bob's eldest son, felt the weight most. While the world remembered his father either as the charming Colonel Hogan from Hogan's Heroes or as the scandal-ridden figure of tabloid headlines, Robert was determined to uncover the truth and present a fuller, more human picture of who Bob Crane really was. Robert Jr. spent years digging into the details of the case. He carefully reviewed old police reports, witness statements, and court records. What he found only deepened his frustration. Critical evidence mishandled, leads ignored, and a crime scene contaminated before it could be properly preserved. To him, these failures suggested not only incompetence, but also a lack of will to pursue justice for his father. The deeper he went, the clearer it became that if Bob Crane was ever to be remembered fairly, it would have to be through his family's efforts, not the legal system's. In 2015, Robert Jr. published his memoir, Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder. The book was not simply about the tragic crime. It was also about growing up as the son of a television icon. Robert shared intimate details of family life, his father's struggles with fame, and the complicated duality of Bob Crane as both a beloved star and a man consumed by private demons. He wrote candidly about the addiction to recording his sexual encounters, not to sensationalize it, but to show how obsession and vulnerability shaped his father's choices. The memoir also served a greater purpose: to reclaim Bob Crane from the shadow of his unsolved murder. Robert Jr. wanted the world to see beyond the crime scene photos and tabloid gossip. He painted a portrait of a man who, despite his flaws, was dedicated to his craft, deeply loved his children, and left a lasting mark on television history. In doing so, Robert Jr. gave his father back his humanity, reminding readers that Bob Crane was more than the gruesome headlines suggested. Through this effort, Robert Crane Jr. turned personal tragedy into a mission. His relentless pursuit of truth not only honored his father's memory, but also exposed the flaws of a justice system that failed to deliver answers. While the murder of Bob Crane remains officially unsolved, Robert Jr.'s voice has ensured that the story of his father is told with dignity, depth, and a search for understanding rather than mere scandal, tragedy, and a shadowed legacy. In the aftermath of Bob Crane's shocking murder, the tragedy of his life extended far beyond the crime scene in Scottsdale. His once celebrated career, built upon the success of Hogan's Heroes and his reputation as a versatile entertainer, became permanently overshadowed by scandal and mystery. Instead of being remembered as the witty and charismatic Colonel Hogan who brought laughter to millions, Crane's name became forever linked with his hidden private life and the brutal, unsolved crime that ended it. What should have been a legacy of television history turned into a cautionary tale of fame gone wrong. The truth is that Hogan's Heroes, one of the most successful sitcoms of the 1960s, rarely surfaces in public memory without the shadow of Bob Crane's death. Lunchboxes, billboards, and Emmy nominations that once defined his success have been erased by the endless retelling of his darkest moments. The scandal, the videotapes, and the salacious details of his secret life became the defining narrative. Crane's artistic achievements were buried beneath the weight of his flaws, and his contribution to television comedy was reduced to a footnote in the broader tragedy of his downfall. Yet behind the headlines was a deeper story. Bob Crane's life revealed the fragility of fame. He embodied the paradox of celebrity culture, where adoration from millions coexists with profound loneliness and inner turmoil. What began as a career of promise and charm slowly unraveled into isolation, risky behavior, and destructive obsessions. Hollywood, with its glitz and allure, often ignores the warning signs until it is too late. In Crane's case, his death became more than a personal tragedy. It exposed how an industry and a society can exploit, celebrate, and ultimately abandon those who fall out of step with its demands. The unanswered questions about his murder only deepened the sense of loss. Crane's end was not just violent, but unresolved, leaving family, friends, and fans with no closure. The mystery of who killed him has kept his name alive, but always in the context of crime rather than creativity. His story reminds us that legacy can be stolen, reshaped by scandal, and denied its rightful place in history. Bob Crane's death stands as a haunting cautionary tale about the dangers of fame, addiction, and unchecked impulses. More importantly, it reflects the indifference of a culture that fixates on spectacle while ignoring the human being at its center. His life and death are not just about one man's downfall, but a warning about how easily brilliance can be eclipsed when tragedy and scandal dominate the story. As we reflect on Bob Crane's life and tragic legacy, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep these stories alive.